So we are still working through some minor prophets. So this week we're going to look at the prophet Habakkuk. And this is actually a very interesting book to look at, kind of in the light of the 4th of July, in the light of reflecting upon the history of our country, and knowing all of the brokenness around us and all of the things, the way our country has gone against God, but still having love for our country and wanting to go to God on behalf of our country to make this a great nation. This book is about kind of recognizing that brokenness around you in the place that you love and going to God and asking, what's going on, and then realizing that God is in control and what's happening is a part of his plan. And then really responding to that with even more confusion. How can this be? And so we get to see how Habakkuk kind of wrestles with these ideas. And so I'm going to go through this the same way we've been going through the last prophets. We're going to answer 5 questions about this. And so first off, who was he in the context of history? So we've moved forward a little bit from Nahum. So Nahum, he prophesied on behalf of kind of the northern kingdom. And so the northern kingdom of Israel has now been wiped out. It's no more. All that's left of God's people is the southern kingdom of Judah, right? And so Habakkuk is in Judah, and he sees what's coming. So what has happened is we're going to have a mirror image. So what just happened in the north is going to happen in the south, which is that the north disobeyed God, went away from God, and then God uses an outside foreign empire who is wicked to come and crush his own people as a punishment, which then he will crush them as a punishment for what they have just done. And so that's going to happen here. In Judah, Babylon is preparing to conquer them as a punishment for who Judah has become, how they are disobeying God. They're going against his covenant. And so he's going to have Babylon come in and crush them as a punishment. But then he's also then going to crush and destroy Babylon later for what they have done. And so we see this pattern. This is what's happening. And this is what Habakkuk is kind of trying to make sense of. So what did he do specifically? And he's another one that kind of has a unique twist to his words. It's not like all of the others because he doesn't speak to the people on behalf of God. He speaks directly to God on behalf of the people. And really it's on behalf of him. It's his own heart. And he is just crying out to God and asking God questions. The first 2 chapters of Habakkuk are this back and forth. Habakkuk reaches out to God and cries out to him, and God responds. And then he responds, and then God responds. So we have this conversation in this first 2 chapters. And then the third and final chapter, we have a song. Habakkuk writes a song it's kind of his response to this conversation. And it's a song of praise. And at the end, it literally says, for the stringed instruments and the choir master, like he wrote this to be sung in the temple about their God after this conversation. And so that's what we're going to look at. The question, why does it matter? I really feel like this one is more obviously relevant to us. All of them have been relevant to us, but you have to dig and you have to find a meaning. This one seems more obvious because he's asking questions that we want to know the answers to. And God answers them. And so we get to see how God responds to these questions that we would have. And so this is an overlooked book, Habakkuk. I mean, I probably went most of my life without even knowing how to pronounce that name, And it's just 3 chapters. And you start reading it and you're kind of like, you don't get it, it's a minor prophet. But this one is so relevant to our current lives because these are the same questions that we will have over and over and that so many people have had. And so we're going to spend the majority of this sermon on the last 2 questions, which is what can we learn from this story about ourselves and what can we learn from his story about God? And we're going to answer them together because since this book is a back and forth conversation, these answers are going to be layered on top of each other. So we're going to start with Habakkuk chapter 1. We're going to read verses 2 to 4. This is how it starts. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not hear? Or cry to you, violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity? And why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. This is the language of the Psalms. This is when the people are desperate and they go to God and they say, Where are you? Do you hear me? Habakkuk is blessed because he gets a response. But most of the time we read through the Psalms, it feels like this is a cry out to God. It is a question, and then you're just putting all these things out there. It reminds me of whenever I'm working through kind of a concept or something with theology, and I'm trying to understand it. I literally have to go to Jessica and speak it out loud. Like, I can have all of these ideas in my mind, but until I'm able to try to explain it to her or talk through my thoughts is when it okay, oh, wait, I understand this. And it's, we need this, and God is there for us with this. This is what the Psalms are, for the most part, is crying out to God, putting our thoughts and ideas into action, into the world, and opening them up to God. And then what we see a lot of times in these Psalms is that you have these questions, and you have these wonders, and you have this distraught, what is going on? And then by the end of the Psalm, they're worshiping God again. They got their words out. And so this is what happens here with Habakkuk. He starts with this language of the Psalms. How long, O Lord, will you answer me? Do you not hear? Look around. I know you see what's going on. And this is the most interesting part to me. I know that you are the reason I see it. If you read verse 3, he says, why do you make me see iniquity? He's saying, I'm made in your image. You're the reason that I can recognize injustice in the world. You are the reason I see all the wrong that's going on. So why have me see it and not do anything? He says, your law has been paralyzed. Your law has been rendered worthless. Because according to God's law, the reason it's set up, the reason we have God's covenant, is because if you obey God's law and you walk in his ways and you live according to his purposes and his design, it will go well with you. God will bless you. However, if you disobey, if you blaspheme God, if you rebel against him, things will go bad. You will pull down the curses of God onto yourself. You have blessing and curses. And he's saying, according to the law, the righteous are blessed and the wicked are cursed. But I'm seeing that the wicked are being cursed, and that's good. But the even more wicked are prospering. What your law is intended for has gone out the window. It's worthless. It's paralyzed. There are even no righteous in the land at all. But the ones who are wicked are being cursed a little bit. But the ones who are more wicked are prospering. And he's seeing this all just in Judah. Just in his country. He's looking out and he's saying, your law is not happening anymore. The people who are doing well are evil. So what is even the point? The underlying thought here is, shouldn't we just be more wicked to get ahead? Because trying to be good is doing nothing. So last November, whenever I was still guest preaching here, I preached on Psalm 73. It's one of my favorite Psalms, and it has this exact same question. Asaph, the psalm writer, he's looking out and he's saying, I'm looking out in this world and I am being crushed. I'm trying to do my best to follow your ways and it's not going well for me. But I look out at all these people who don't follow you and their lives are fine. What's going on? And this is the question that we have, because even the best, most godly people that we know, tragedy can strike. And it can be bewildering. Sorry, hold on. When it's real, this is real. These are not just concepts, but these are what we have to live with. Try to get myself going. Okay. Tragedy can strike. And so when we look out and we see the world, who we would call the world, who don't follow God, who don't care about what he has to say, and we see them successful and thriving, and yet people who care and love God, we look at God and we say, why? And this is what Habakkuk is asking. Why? And we don't get understanding. This idea of natural consequence. I live according to your purposes and ways. And that natural consequence of evil is that you're punished. But the natural consequence of living a godly life, I'm still punished. What's going on? And God answers. He says that he does see the injustice in the world. He does not ignore it. He isn't idle. He says he's going to punish the wicked people of Judah. And you can just imagine Habakkuk at this point. He's sitting here saying, why? Why don't you punish them? Why are they living great? And he says, I am going to punish them. And so Habakkuk is like, wow, I asked you and you actually answered me. You are going to do what I want you to do. This is going pretty well. Like, I didn't expect this. But then God says, I'm going to punish them by having Babylon conquer them. And they're going to enslave them. Your people are going to become slaves. They're going to take all of your riches. They're going to take your land. The best land in the world, the promised land, is going to be theirs now. And that's going to be the punishment. So now you have Habakkuk who's in shock. Like, no, this is not what I want. Sure, the wicked are going to be punished. That's great. But you're using the even more wicked people of Babylon to do it. So the wicked people are punished, but the even more wicked people are receiving a reward. How does this make sense? And so he cries out to God. This is in chapter 1, verse 12 and 13. He says, Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for reproof. You who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? Why do you sit idly by and let the ones who are more wicked do well? Sometimes I think that the Christian life is like this, that right when we're getting to a point where we're making sense of the world, where we're making sense of the Bible, something will happen that just confuses us again, that gives us uncertainty. And God does respond to this. But so many times we can feel like, yes, things are making sense. Things are going well. This is how it should be. Reading the Bible, I understand. And then something happens that wants to shake our faith. God responds. This is in chapter 2, verse 4. He says, Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him. But the righteous shall live by faith. This is a very short verse. And only the last half is really famous. The righteous shall live by faith. Paul quotes this half of a verse 2 times. He quotes it in Romans and Galatians. It's also quoted in Hebrews. So we have New Testament writers latching on to this one half of a sentence. The righteous shall live by faith. God is saying here that the soul that is puffed up, the soul that is self-confident, that has really no need for God, and they live great according to who they are, and things are going well for them, and they believe in themselves, they have their reward. But the ones who want God, the righteous, they live by faith. This uncertainty that we can have, where we get shaken, this is what helps us to rely on God more fully. Because in our not understanding, we can go to God and just trust in him. This gives us the ability to prove and walk in faith because we can't understand. As Christians, we do not live according to what our eyes see and how we feel about what is going on around us. We live according to the truth of who God is. Despite our own understanding of how he accomplishes his will, we live according to the truth of who God is. Early on when I preached here, I preached a message on faith. I preached 2, and I think this is my very second one. And it's the idea that biblical faith is not blind. It's not like this idea of a leap of faith that's like risky or a shot in the dark. Our faith is built on a comprehensive knowledge of who God is. It's trust because we know we can trust. It's the idea that we know the sun is going to rise tomorrow because it has for millions of days before. We have a huge amount of information giving us trust that the sun is going to rise again. Or it's this idea that, if you were on a cliff and there's like a cloud and you're like, the only way down is to jump. You don't just jump into the cloud and hope that you're not falling to your death. But there's a voice there that says, hey, it's safe. I'm already here. You can jump here. You have faith because you have knowledge. This is what God gives us. We have a faith in who God is. It's not just this, I hope this works out. It's not a risk. We know that God is true. We know that God is in control. And so we can have faith and trust in that. I want to read a passage from John, the Gospel of John. This is chapter 20. It's 24 to 29. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." 8 days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." This passage is so great because, he's giving this celebration of faith. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. However, he still has compassion on the one who needs help believing. He still let him touch the holes in the side because he loved him and he cared for him and wanted him to believe. And that's a completely different lesson. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. The righteous shall live by faith. Last week I read this verse to the kids. I just read the first two. I'm going to read the second two. Proverbs 3, 5-8. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths." And we read that a lot. And then the second part. "Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones." Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So he's saying, do not be wise to yourself, but have true wisdom, which is the fear of the Lord. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. And this is a very simple concept that is very hard to enact in our lives. Because this is saying true trust in God relieves stress. It gives you more freedom. It gives refreshment to you. But faith is not trusting that good will happen because you follow God, but being able to trust God even though good isn't happening. We flip it around. If we can trust God even when we can't see any good, that will be refreshment to our bones. And it doesn't seem like it will be, but it will. Because when we have nothing else to trust in but God, God is enough. So we have something when we're at our end to be able to fall on, who is sturdy and who can hold us, and who can be compassionate toward us, like he was to Thomas. So we have knowledge of God. And Habakkuk had knowledge of God. Because he had the knowledge of God's purity and holiness, it made it inconceivable to him that the Lord would use a wicked empire to punish his own people. He was using his knowledge of who God is, and he was saying, I just don't understand. But what's great, so if we go back to chapter 1, verse 12, he says, "O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for reproof." He believed God. When God told him what he was going to do, he believed him. He just said, I don't understand. So this is the definition of faith. He's believing, he's just not understanding. He says in chapter 2, verse 1, he says, "I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me." So he's saying, I believe, I understand you're going to do this. I know you're going to do this because you say what you're going to do and you do it. I don't understand it, but I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to stand here for your answer and see if you'll answer me, see if I can understand. But I am going to watch you do it because I know you will. There is a nuance in our approach to questioning within faith that really, really matters. We can question God, but we have to question from within faith because that differentiates it from sin and doubt. We can question within faith. And we can see this very clearly in the story of Mary and her uncle Zechariah. Because the angel of God comes to Zechariah and he says, you're going to have a child, you and your wife. And they're very old. And they say, he basically says, how is this possible? But he says, how can I believe this? That's the question. How do you expect me to believe this? He wants understanding before he can believe. When the angel of God comes to Mary, it says, you will conceive. She says, I believe. But how is it possible? Her answer was, I believe that you can do whatever you say you're going to do. I don't understand it because I'm a human, but I do believe you, but how? Whereas Zechariah says, how do you expect me to believe this? And this is the difference. Faith comes first before understanding. Understanding is not opposed to faith. We can still wait for understanding and hope for understanding, but belief comes first, and we hope understanding will follow. Whereas the sin and doubt is where you feel like you can't believe until you understand more, because you don't want to trust. So God is not done with his answer while, Habakkuk's waiting. He acknowledges that this could be confusing, that he's punishing wicked with wicked, but he says, I'm going to punish them as well. No one's going to get away with anything. Just like he told Nahum, I will by no means clear the guilty. So most of chapter 2 is he details 5 woes against Babylon, which the 5 woes, W-O-E-S, are 5 things that he explains their sin and says, this is why they're bad and this is why they're going to be destroyed. This is why I'm going to punish them. 5 specific things that I look and I see their injustice and I see their sin. And he assures Habakkuk that he's going to be true to his word. I will punish the wicked. He doesn't give him all the intricacies of his plan. But he does say, I am God, and you can trust me. He also gives him a little bit, Habakkuk hasn't specifically asked this question, but he gives him something here. It's in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 14. He says, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Israel has been destroyed. Judah is about to be destroyed. So there's this idea, God, your people on the earth are about to be gone. And you have this promise to these people. How are you going to keep your promise to these people when the people are gone? And God says, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of God. The promise does come through the descendants of his people, but the promise is for all people. So just because Israel and Judah are no longer there at the moment, God is saying, my word is still true because my promise is for all. And he answers that here. So Habakkuk is led into worship after this, at these words. What's great is he doesn't respond to some detailed answer. Like I said, God didn't give him the intricacies of his plan. It's like God is working behind the curtain. He didn't let Habakkuk come behind the curtain and see. What happened is that God came out from behind the curtain and said, look, it's me. It's God. I'm the one working here, so you can trust me. And so Habakkuk, after seeing and understanding that it's his God who is true to his word, who is almighty, who is in control, is the one doing these things, he says, okay, I don't have to understand it all, but I can trust you. And so he worships. Whatever may come to pass, despite his understanding, he can have faith. So he finishes, this is the last couple verses of his song, this worship song that he writes after this conversation with God. And we can place our kind of words into this because we're not looking for the fig tree or the olive tree. But whatever things are not going well in our lives, we can substitute them into this song. He says, though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on high places. So what we learn is that we should respond the way Habakkuk does. In all situations, whether good or bad, and that's whether good or bad from our own perspective, because it's the only one we have, we should be able to recenter our eyes on God, remember who it is that we serve, and despite our understanding, we can say with Habakkuk, we can say, our God is great and worthy of worship and praise. I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. Because we trust in who God is. We don't trust in what is going on. We may not understand, but we trust in him. Our faith is in him. Our faith is not how he necessarily acts because we can't understand it. His ways are higher, but we can trust in him. And we can have joy in our salvation. We can have joy through suffering and through sorrow. It's a deeper, deeper joy that God can supply us than just what's on the surface. So let us pray.